Welcome to the podcast. This is Speaking Of. I'm your host, Eric Petty, as always, hostess with the mostest. Today on the show, we have Dr. David Stehlik. Give it up. At the beginning of every podcast, we do a little portion of this called Three Questions. Yay! Is your last name a typo?
Is my last name a typo?
Yeah, how?
No, it actually means golden finch. It's a Czech name.
Really? That's the best answer I think I've ever heard on that. Let's see. You're currently on a 10-month contract as a full-time faculty here, right?
That's correct.
Why are you here today?
Because you asked me to be on the podcast.
Because you've been hanging around the school here for, well, I see you almost every day, as a matter of fact.
Why am I here this summer?
Yeah.
Well, I'm working on a textbook. I'm finishing it up. The text portion of the book is finished, but I'm recording videos, case study videos for the book, ancillary type activity book.
What's the title of your book?
Crafting Strategy, Practicing Case Activities.
By
David Stehlik.
Oh, that's right. Just making sure, give you the full-on promotion.
I'm the sole author. There's no other
There's
author.
no ghost writer on this?
No.
You're like the James Patterson of textbook creation or anything like that? Because he doesn't write his own books.
Oh, does he not?
No, he comes up, I guess, he comes with his idea. That's why he puts a book out every month. Somebody else writes them for him.
I thought he was just that good.
No.
Well, I mean, I didn't because I would assume he's that good. But with AI, you can speed this process up quite a bit.
Quite a bit. We'll talk about that. I got a little bit of something I'm working on too, which I'll tell you about that. Has anybody ever told you look a little bit like French Stewart? Do you know what French Stewart is? You ever watched Third Rock from the Sun years ago?
I'm familiar with the reference, but I did not watch it.
It's a good show. John, you ever watch that?
Yeah.
Doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Very talented actor. And a good guy.
Hey,
A steward of the world.
it's
Let's move on to new things. Today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, which is really interesting because I don't have any intelligence. We're fully aware of that.
I deny that.
That's what I've been told. Actually, quite a bit of times, whatever. So I want to talk to you about AI. You're doing a lot of work with that. What are you doing? What's been your interest initially in artificial intelligence, AI?
Well, initially it had to do with entrepreneurship. So for the last 15 years, at least, the marketing world has been using some form of artificial intelligence. I mean, you see this in social media. How do they curate a feed? It's a form of artificial intelligence. Either it's machine learning, they're working, with neural networks. There are different approaches to solving problems, and these large data-rich problems that are very manually intensive and really not scalable without this new advancement. And the advancement is essentially like with a cell phone. You now have 10,000, a million servants in your pocket, right? You can pull up a calculator app and it can do things faster than you'd be able to do, and faster perhaps than an entire, division at NASA could have done, 80 years ago or something.
Right.
Well, the reference may be off in terms of the time and so forth.
You're not
right
you're not far off though.
But with my interest, it was marketing in particular. There were groups who were working on what's called like ad copy. So you go to a website and it tells you all about kind of how great a product is. And that text is ad copy. And there were tools that were being developed scraping the internet of ad copy and then learning how to replicate the sense of writing for people who are trying to sell new products and services, rather than write, 10,000 words from scratch. Take the form of hundreds of thousands of words that other people had used to replicate something similar for your own product and service. Not the features perhaps, but the format of how do you, hook the audience to your webpage? How do you start promoting and evangelizing your product features and benefits to solve the customer's problem.
So
So I was getting interested in this. And
it's using the questions that we're asking about the products. Like, does it do this, and it's modifying either the product itself, or it's modifying the search parameters, or what's it using?
At the time, it's not like what you have today with large language models. These are developments now that have occurred, but these were not what existed. What existed essentially were macros. You think of an Excel macro, it's just running the same task as you, but it's running it faster without you having to be involved in the process because you've recorded the steps. And so essentially you start establishing the process for writing similar copy. We need a opener, we need a hook, we need a product benefits section, we need a are you facing these challenges section, we need a form for input of visitor data, your email. We need a format that we can replicate, a template, right? So you're in a classroom and students ask you inevitably, tell me or show me what a good example of this looks like. Mm-hmm. That's a form of artificial intelligence. I'm not creating it from scratch. I'm giving you an example that can speed up your replication of some good kind of work.
Do you think that speeds up the process that much? Is it just augmenting it a little bit? Instead of coming from scratch, let's say, we'll take Edison. Even though he didn't invent the light bulb, he perfected it. But he had some concept of it. Instead of tinkering around with it, what does it say, 3,000 times? Is that what he did to perfect the light bulb? Instead, now you have, well, let's take the last two now. So you can eliminate all that other stuff. It's kind of eliminating all the noise for people now.
It's making it invisible. So if you want to think about it like craftsmanship and apprenticeship, right?
Okay.
You don't become, and this is interesting because these are some other areas that I'm interested in thinking about now with regard to the classroom and pedagogy, but you don't become a master after three attempts.
Right.
It takes this apprenticeship through a journeyman, through finally maybe becoming a master craftsman. And you think about it in the martial arts, right? And the idea of getting a black belt, often in some kind of oriental martial art, the idea is that once you become the black belt, you don't become a master of expertise, you become an expert master of the basics.
That's a good way to look at that.
You have the fundamentals under control. And I think with AI, what we're seeing is that process of mastery development made invisible and shortened before your eyes, because all of the training happens in millions of iterations in server racks.
So now when it comes to business, then we're looking at opportunities to eliminate a lot of precursor, eliminating in a lot of ways prototyping, all the things that go along with that, so we can actually streamline, cut down expenses, get to product quicker.
Yes, get to product quicker, or get to the creation of solutions quicker, or get to the creation of quality communication about what you've developed quicker. You think about an organization that doesn't spend any money on marketing and sales originally, because they're only focused on research and development and product development. Well, at some point, they've got to sell their product or service. And if they haven't hired anyone in marketing and in sales, copywriting, then they either have to build that capacity internally. Someone all of a sudden has to become a marketer, or you have to hire someone and you have to bring that competency in-house. Well, organizations are saying to themselves, if we have people who are moderately okay at doing some of that work, then if we support them with these tools that can take them faster to okay work, so that they can either upskill from okay work to great work really fast, meaning they can skip a lot of training activity, or we can take someone who's brand new out of college, or maybe doesn't even have a college degree, and we can put them at equivalence with someone who's got a college degree in terms of output, not in terms of what's in their head, not in terms of the iterative development of becoming an apprentice, journeyman, and then becoming a master of basics, but we we give them the approximation of that kind of output with the tool.
So it's not so much about you went to college, you got a sales and marketing degree, something like that in undergrad, maybe an MBA. You're coming out and you're saying, okay, I want somebody that can do this. Would you today hire somebody that was just the hardcorest marketing person? Or would you hire somebody that knew marketing advertising a little bit, but was really, really good at AI?
Okay, so AI, we're talking about using the tools that
Correct.
can upskill,
Knows how to
quality
use it, knows how to manipulate it, polish it up, whatever you want to use.
Well, I don't think you ultimately have to make a choice between the two.
This is a hypothetical situation.
Right. And I only say that because...
And I'm the host, so I can make the rules.
Continuous learning, right? Lifelong learning. So if you're on that spectrum of I'm either great at one or I'm great at the other, I think you can become better at either over time. So I don't think you're locked into determining your future by making that choice. I would probably opt for the person who has the rarer, harder to develop skill. And that's going to change. Because what's happening right now is people have been in this paradigm of developing these traditional skills, these traditional competencies, and now this new thing in terms of large language model usage has become the rare, harder to develop skill or competency. But as everyone starts using this, then which becomes scarcer once again, that unique domain knowledge and capacity to think through the challenging problems of the domain. I think that's going to be the real differentiator for different knowledge domains. It's how high level is your awareness and skill to deal with the problems in that domain. Yeah. Because then you can use all kinds of tools to help solve the problem. Right now, the tools, it's like, what's this new, this automotive vehicle? What is this? This doesn't look like a horse and buggy. And all of a sudden, everyone has access to this. What's rare now? Well, learning how to take care of horses in stables.
Yeah, buggy whips. The manufacturers of buggy whips are not too prolific anymore. You've talked about the LLM, the large language models, whatever. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is that?
Essentially, it's a math equation. Lots of information was manually labeled through thousands and thousands of employees, often like with Amazon, this Mechanical Turk project they had, where individuals were helping to, label actual information for very low pay, and then they trained these neural networks on that labeled information, and then ran their own, I guess you'd say, artificial intelligence software against that training set so that it could learn to replicate that as getting better and better with some of these models on information it hadn't seen or that hadn't been labeled by humans. Okay,
for whatever reason.
Well, think of it like this. I give a student an example of quality work so that they can try to replicate quality work.
Okay.
And if I don't give them any example, I'm not really sure what they're going to produce. But if I give them quality work, they can learn.
They can at least emulate it to some aspect.
Right. Here are the markers of a great 5-paragraph essay, right? Okay. So that's going on. Now, these large language models are taking as their training data hundreds of millions of web pages worth of information and books. And what they're doing is they are essentially evaluating the words that are in proximation to one another. Location, okay, so the, dog, and the, what is the most likely word to come after that in terms of statistical analysis on hundreds of millions of web pages or books, the word that is from all of that most likely to occur next.
Optometrist.
Sure. And then they're building out a set of weights, which is that statistical model so that when you enter something like a token, which is a word or a part of a word, so you enter a sentence, it's tokenized. And the idea is each word is a token or a part of a token, and that sentence is a set of tokens. And you enter it, and it's like a multiplication problem. I mean, that's overly simplifying it, but you run that multiplication problem, and it computes the most likely next word. Each time it's producing or generating a word on your screen through one of these chat bots, it's running a statistical analysis. And with that, there is a context window, because how much information can it keep in its memory to give you the statistical most likely next word? At some point, it runs out of that memory. And so their different language models allow for different sized context windows, or how much can it hold on to when it's computing that next word for you. And so you also get these levers in your chatbots, for instance, that say, do you want it to be more creative or less creative, right? And there's like a spectrum, a slider, or something that you can choose.
Is that right? It could be a little bit more
creative
and easy on the wording at the end of that.
But here's what's actually happening. You're simply determining, is it going to, when forecasting what is the most likely next word, going to choose the word at the top of the list of probabilities, or a word that's maybe in the top 5?
So instead of the
optometrist,
35, that's the most common, as we know. Like, instead of being, this is statistically speaking, this is 35% of the time people say the dog and the cat. Probably number 2, the dog and the bone. Dog and the Butterfly, because I'm a big Heart fan. That was a really good song. You don't know that song. Probably Dog and the Butterfly. It's a great song. But then you get that creative, you can say 0.5, 0.25% of the time, this is hitting it. So that's really, it makes, that's a really good optometrist did come up on that for some stupid reason.
Right. And that's where large language models can seem to evince real creativity. It's not creativity in the form that we think of in terms of generating idea out of nothing. Right. But we don't generate ideas out of nothing. We generate ideas out of what's already in our mind. Just some of it's accessed less when we're talking about a specific topic. So when we say the cat and we don't think optometrist, even though that's already in our memory.
Right, right.
But we could. The fact that we don't illustrates maybe that we are learning something through the use of large language models.
Back and forth learning then.
About creativity.
Yeah. You said that Amazon made a mechanical turkey?
No, Mechanical Turk was the name of a project they ran with
That'd be
20,000
so cool.
Human beings.
No mechanical turkey, though? That's too bad. I'd really love to see a mechanical
It's probably
turkey.
some steampunk thing.
It would be really cool.
Turkeys.
You know who started the whole steampunk?
No.
It was H.G. Wells.
Okay.
Not that that makes any difference. That's a little
Well,
tidbit
large
for you.
language models have definitely been trained on his corpus of writing.
That guy started a lot of things. I think didn't he come up with the idea with the fax machines?
Probably.
Internet or
We can ask an LLM and it might know.
Actually,
It might hallucinate it.
If only
but
I had a way to look up something in a mobile fashion that was in my hand and I could just type things in someday.
Someday.
So saith H.G. Wells like 150 odd years ago. Do you think that AI is going to? Well, let's make the big. What do I have to do to please the AI overlords? Is really the ultimate question. But at this time, how is AI going to either augment to provide more jobs, or is this going to be such a thing that you can at some point in time as a business owner say, I can fire my whole marketing and this department and that department because I have AI at my fingertips now, and I can get more information faster for nothing, $25 a month, whatever the subscription is. Which one do you see that happening? Augmenting people or replacing people?
Again, I don't think these are mutually exclusive realities. I do think that there will be groups of individuals who, in their current type of work, that type of work will get displaced or replaced. I don't think that there will be, so this is kind of speaking from my professional futurist's hat. There are significant concerns related to artificial intelligence and large language model usage and other forms of AI. large language models being one form, one element, one work activity of artificial intelligence developments. This is very compute intensive, meaning that it requires lots of computational power, which means it needs a lot of development in the semiconductor and computer chip design industry. So I see that industry. I think most people looking at AI right now are seeing that industry's growth and continued development.
NVIDIA alone has gone up, what, 200-300% on their stock price
Okay,
this year.
yeah, so that's just them taking advantage of their existing capability to produce and innovate and engage in research and investment. And you're seeing the connection between those developments and higher levels of education in specific fields. And so the need for the development of programs in terms of academic programs that can foster that kind of thinking and research. So you're seeing this with, for instance, Purdue. They just got this massive grant related to artificial intelligence and semiconductor development and so forth. Then besides that, though, you have what some people have been referring to maybe a resurgence in the humanities, specifically areas where large language models need training or need experts, and that's in English. The majority of the information that all of these large language models have been trained on is information in English. So the English-speaking world has a massive advantage with all of these tools right now.
Versus, say, something in a different country with a different language. Are they behind in a technological manner, or what makes the English language so predominant in that case?
Most of the internet is in English.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. And for the longest period of time, I mean, Wikipedia, as the world's kind of encyclopedia online,
that's where I get
was in English.
Right.
And didn't have all of these other translations. Now, AI is helping speed up translation work, but the quality of that translation work will be dependent on what? Humans ensuring that the process of translating, even if it's artificial tasks that are set up and then run by, bots, is good interpretive work, right? So typically when you're translating a major text, maybe if it's a novel, it might be you might have one or two experts working on it. But when you, for instance, are translating the Bible, you have teams, right? Massive teams. And those teams have teams that work on maybe a certain section because of how important the work is to society. So kind of going back to your question about displacement, replacement, I think you're going to have a resurgence of certain kinds of thinking work that will be necessary to improve the quality of the artificial intelligence work. So you also have, though, the questions of what industries are AI tools dependent upon to get better and to run. So to get better, we're going to need a lot more energy. So the energy sector, in terms of power plants and how we generate energy, how we distribute energy across the grid, these are going to be really important growth sectors.
I saw a discussion with the CEO of NVIDIA. I can't remember the guy's name.
Jensen Huang.
Is that who that is? Okay. He just did it was 2 weeks ago. It was before the stock split happened. And he was talking about the amount of power, and people started kind of throwing this thing together because that's more power that's generated in all of these power plants put together. But he was saying this is exactly as you're talking about. This is where the world is going to. We need more power. That's a huge thing to say, and it kind of freaked everybody out at the same time. They're like, well, we need to figure out new ways of getting different power. We can ask our future AI overlords that as well.
Yeah, so energy usage is critical. And it's a question, too, because you have to think what's actually happening. This isn't magic. It's not happening in the sky. It is electricity running server racks that are running mathematical models that are generating a lot of heat. And how do you cool them? With air conditioning units, with water cooling units.
Something.
Right? And so the amount of electricity that goes into not just running the algorithm, but cooling the machines that are running the algorithm, and the water that is being used is incredible. So we are located here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And in Indiana, there have been two major projects by big tech, Google and Amazon. And these data centers that are going to be multi-building data centers, the amount of power that they are going to use and the access they will need to the water supply for cooling those buildings and those server racks so that they don't go down, because these are millions of dollars of equipment connected to the energy grid. How is that? I mean, communities all over the United States, across the world, are thinking, why are they coming here? I can guarantee you it's probably related to the cost of energy. It's access to land,
resource and everything else.
Yeah, it's all of these natural resources, the cost of doing business. I mean, this is how these companies are thinking. And one thing I read about how for the Project Zodiac here in Fort Wayne, how it was being done, and it's because there's 12 buildings, so 12, right? And how it kind of came to be in Google's mind that this might be a good location is because the electricity company recommended it as getting
that makes sense.
Right?
Come on over.
The electricity company sees these big tech companies as major customers because they use so much energy. And,
why wouldn't you?
Right? And so if they're like, where should we locate? Let's find a place where we have perhaps a lower cost resource that's not used up and going to hopefully significantly impact your community. And let's locate there.
Let's hope not. It causes a bunch of brownouts every time we turn around.
Yeah, or raise the energy prices.
Right.
It won't be low cost of living for a lot of people any longer.
Well, you can go to my mom and dad's house, and he turns the air conditioner on to like 76. That's cold for him. You know, he's 88. So you go in there, it's warmer inside the house with the air on than it is outside. That's how the difference. It's extremely strange, and he still has it on for some reason. But
the future is what you make it, so make it matter.
At the University of St. Francis,
we'll help you build a purposeful life.
One based on your interest, goals, and desire to make the world a better place.
Learning is personal here.
You'll be known by name,
supported by experts,
and connected to professional opportunities.
Our Catholic values will inspire you to use your education for the greater good.
By serving and leading others.
Build a life of meaning and purpose.
At the University of St. Francis.
You belong here.
Lord, where was that going to happen in Fort Wayne? Where were they going to put those buildings?
Was it Northeast Fort Wayne?
Way out near Carroll?
It's a rural location.
Like near Huntertown, Harlan kind of area?
Yeah, it's public information. Maybe you can put it up on like a lower third on the video here.
John will have to make sure we
Google map it.
You talked a little bit about education and AI in education and writing papers. I've seen a few students that have utilized AI technology to write the entire paper. And I know they had nothing to do with it, but they must have put a pretty good search parameter in there because it came back absolutely perfect. And it came back with some whimsical, I recall as a young child, I remember sitting on my wow, this is an extremely poignant story from this one guy who I know couldn't possibly, and then you say, did you write this? And they all say no. How is AI going to affect education, either positively, negatively? What can teachers look forward to?
Not being able to stop change, but being able to direct change. And I think the need to understand what is happening, like what we talked about at the beginning, related to what is actually occurring at the base level of a large language model, which they are using for writing papers or helping them with analysis of some kind, informing them, tutoring them in how to work through certain problems. For instance, you can go to one of these large language models, the upper tier that can do more sophisticated work. What would they call them? The frontier models, the ones that are at the edge of release into the field right now. So the GPT-4s,
GPT things,
yeah, like 4.0, which is 4 Omni, which can do multimodal. Claude, some of the Claude 3 versions. Opus, I think, has its largest context window. Gemini 1.5, I think Ultra maybe, or Pro is one of their frontier models. But the idea is these models are becoming better and better at reasoning and running responses to your prompt, remember it's statistical mathematics essentially, in ways that replicate or seem to replicate how humans actually think through problems in terms of cause and effect, in terms of chain of thought. This thought leads to this thought, leads to this thought versus cause and effect. Problem solution. You can manipulate the large language model to run a different approach to your prompt, and that will result in different output. It's not doing search. This is important for all the students to be made aware of. It is not finding you an answer. It isn't looking back into a database of all of these books and all of these, materials and finding that answer and giving it to you with some different wording. It is literally generating the answer from the weights that they've created from the training set. So the training set's gone, the weights exist, and your prompt is turned into tokens that when you hit enter becomes a math problem that generates a math solution that is retokenized into words.
So it's the most likely answer in a lot of ways.
The training set is important because you've heard that it doesn't tell you anything recent or up to, it might say the information is recent up to a certain date. And that's because it's not telling you it can pull from any information from August of 2023 and before. It can generate a response that includes weights that included training data from up to that point.
Okay. I saw something a while back, and it might have been a bot. It was a conversational bot. They were asking it questions.
Yeah.
I don't remember who. It could have been Microsoft, as far as I know. And they were typing in questions about whatever. And they noticed at first it was pretty good. And there was just kind of information, but the more they started kind of manipulating questions or whatever, suddenly the responses became either extremely sexist or extremely racist. And everyone's like, well, how dare you? But now that we're talking about this, it seems like, no, it was just getting experience from something that was being input by humans. So if it's that easy to manipulate, could it be something that, as we're going along here and people start to trust on this, can that be manipulated fairly easy?
Okay, so this is an element of what is called the alignment problem. And the alignment problem is a really broad area for discussion in artificial intelligence. And many of the groups that are working, OpenAI, Anthropic, and others, are dealing with this question of aligning AI with humanity's interests, right? So essentially aligning our software, our use of tools, like mankind, especially when it comes to war, has constantly had to ask, what are the ethical uses of these very powerful things I've created? And it starts with a rock, right? And then it becomes a warhead, and then it becomes code. The alignment problem asks us to consider the ethical implications of developing, of training, of using, and the impact that the use leads to. And humans are doing this work. So I used to talk to my ethics class. I taught the course Franciscan Values in Ethics in Business, and we would talk about driverless vehicles, autonomous vehicles,
right,
at some point.
It's a big thing now.
And you have to ask yourself, what is the right thing for the vehicle to do in a given circumstance? Should the vehicle protect the driver? Should it protect the most vulnerable individual in its area or space, right? So you have a motorcyclist next to a super, Humvee or something, and the Humvee's, AI-led autonomous driving, and there's a semi coming up to its side, and there's some kind of problem that's going to emerge. And the AI has to determine, should I move into the semi? Should I stop and cause the person behind me an accident? Should I swerve into the most available lane, which is where the motorcyclist, who is protected by the algorithm? And you know who decides that? Who's coding?
Right.
Right? Who's coding or who's determining the training
So if it's
data?
a lunatic, you're in trouble.
Well, this is where I
More
think,
than likely.
so this is where I'm going to say Christian higher education has an opportunity to really help shape the future world in a unique way with technology, because we have the answers to how to manage ethical issues, because we have reasons, foundations for those answers.
Yeah.
And so we can program in the axioms, the assumptions we think the world should operate by, because they've been given to us. They've been delivered to us once and for all. And I think that will prove itself out in the quality of artificial intelligence tools that we get in society.
You talked about the alignment problem. I think there's a future job here. I think you're going to have an AI mechanic or an AI chiropractor. Because then you fix the alignment. Just think of that. Somebody comes in, all nerded up.
Yeah.
You could say, oh, that's the AI. I could be called an AI chiropractor. I'd be all right.
Well, I think
Fix the alignment.
there are individuals who are studying things in liberal arts universities and seminaries who should really be thinking about how they can position into this industry. AI ethicists, practitioners from the church, seminarians, getting involved with these organizations to help them think through the effects on humanity. And I think that will be a major step forward in being able to sell these to the public.
I think it's a great idea, because if you have, like we're talking about with the bots and the conversation, it went immediately racist, sexist, or whatever, there has to be a way to protect the information that's coming in, because if it's garbage apparently and some other things going in there you don't want to.
But who gets to decide what garbage is?
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
That's the hard part. That's where you get the AI chiropractor, which you can call me that from now on if you want to. In the classrooms, a lot of teachers will talk about the one thing that I've heard the most about, I read about, is plagiarism, is cheating, is everything that goes along with what you think that this is going into, that students are just not going to do their own work. There's nothing unique. There's nothing creative. They're just putting some prompt in there. And then most teachers, I don't think, can tell the difference between an absolutely generated one. I mean, I can tell the ones that are made on their cell phones, because it's all IDK for I don't know and LOLs and stuff. I can see that a lot of times. I know that they're creating on their phone, but the perfections always kind of get me a little out of whack. And now some of the AI detectors aren't that good, from what I understand. They have a failure rate that's enough to be a problem that a student can say, well, I did it myself. Is it that big of a problem? Are we making something more out of this?
This is a foundational issue that I think you're seeing symptoms of in terms of this like plagiarism war, anti-plagiarism tools and everything. And the question is, why is a student opting to use a tool to do work, right? You're not doing mathematical equations. You're pulling up Excel to run, tabulation on data. You're doing statistical analysis that way. You're using a calculator to determine certain figures and answers to mathematical questions.
Yeah.
This is a next development of that same kind of advancement in technology assisting us in doing the kinds of things we want to do as a society to live the kinds of lives we want to live. And if the kind of life that we as a society want to live is unthinking, totally taken care of in convenience and comfort, without using the minds that we've been graced with by God, that's a tragedy. And so part of the educational endeavor is not to have people produce an output, but to be transformed. And part of that process is the initial step of educating is not produce. I want you to be able to produce this kind of paper, but I want you to understand the things we are thinking about and writing about as a way to think about them more and more deeply.
Enhancement.
Is because it's important. These are important matters. 2, that you should be interested in these matters as a human being in a certain field, doing certain kinds of good to affect society. And 3, that you are actually capable of being a deeply thinking individual motivated about these matters who can affect society as you get better at that. You can develop mastery. So you have to create a longing in the heart of the pupil, of the student, to want to become someone who can master these things.
So how do we do that? How do we create, instead of going back to the H.G. Wells original conversation we had here, that the Eloi versus the Morlocks, that the Eloi lived in comfort. This is nerddom. You want to go into Dune or Lord of the Rings? Because you get John up here and he'll amaze you with his nerdism. That I'm always reminded, for some reason I have this in the back of my mind, the Eloi live in comfort. They are oblivious to the world. The Morlock are down here, eating them and such. And I'm always reminded, and I think that same thing you're talking about, well, yeah, people that aren't thinking anymore and they become just beings that really don't have any substance or ability to do or think or whatever. And that's my concern.
There was an interview I saw the other day with the president of El Salvador. All these things were happening in El Salvador with murder capital type stuff of the world. And now they're in terms of murders, one of the safest places on the planet in the Western Hemisphere, even surpassing the United States apparently by the information I think that goes to the UN.
El Salvador?
Yes.
Now? Really?
And one of the comments that the president of El Salvador made was that you have your best and brightest in your country focused on developing addictive algorithms to get likes. You have individuals who are supremely motivated by a sense of stature, recognition, by working for certain companies whose primary goal in technology right now is to own your attention. Because by owning your attention, I can own your expenditures. I can own your wallet. And he makes the case, decades ago, your best and brightest figured out a way to get to the moon. Why are your best and brightest not supremely motivated to do civilizational level work and accomplish feats that previous generations could only have dreamed of being able to accomplish? We have technology, we have incredible institutions of higher learning and modes of learning. We have the internet. I mean, this is incredible distribution of knowledge at scale. And we're using it to make ourselves irrelevant in ways that are not because the work we're doing is so good, we're becoming irrelevant, but we're not even aiming to do good work. We don't have aspirations to do incredible work. And that's part of the educational endeavor, is create the longing in the heart of the student to do incredible work that they can be proud of, work that their community can be proud of, work that enhances the lives of those living in their community and their colleagues.
So it's like, if you take the idea of the influencer, somebody has their hot dog legs at the beach or whatever that is, get their hot dog legs out there, and you have an influencer, and you say, boy, if you could take some of that want of the likes, you could do some pretty incredible things with that. Get somebody who has the knowledge and the purpose, do some important stuff.
Well, Eric, if you think about this podcast, it's likely going to be a lot longer in recording than what will actually result in editing and shows up online.
Correct.
And that's not because individuals wouldn't benefit from the entire stream of consciousness and set of questions and responses that have emerged from this conversation, but because people's attention is insufficient, right?
Very much so.
And so we look at media and how long do people listen before they form an opinion about some political or business newsworthy matter.
I don't need to hear it or I'm interested. It's either or nowadays. How can we take that then, if we're taking that kind of influencer idea, or we're trying to say, hey,
I'm saying that because that speaks to what influencers are optimizing for.
Right.
They're optimizing to tell you only the things or speak about only the topics that you are already salivating for.
It's the Kardashians kind of thing. If that's so. I don't watch it either. Don't feel too bad. Okay. How can we take that, though, and put that in a classroom? How can we take that and say, okay, I want no plagiarization if I can help it. I don't want any of that. I want people to come up with ideas and try to stimulate what kind of an assignment can we put together for those that are out there kind of looking to think, I'm a teacher. I want to do this next thing. How can I do this without saying, hey, write this? I know it's not going to be anything that they wrote, but how can I use this where it's a melding of both my mind and then...
You have to be a storyteller to start. Okay. You have to be a storyteller who can cast the vision before the student that says, like I use this kind of analogy that I've picked up from other educators. I didn't come up with it. A lot of my students are athletes. And to become a great athlete in most sports, you have to develop your body. As the Apostle Paul says, like you beat your body into submission, but that only provides some kind of development rather than developing your spirit in other matters. But these students are very familiar with what it means to go to the weight room or to do reps.
Sure.
And I make the argument that, like I've heard as well, that when you're lifting weight, the point of lifting the weight is not to displace in space and time that weight. Up and down, left and right, moving your muscles. And so the point isn't the movement of the weight. The point is not writing the paper, right? So plagiarism is effectively, now I've got a pneumatic, lever that can, press or whatever, can lift that weight for me. And I can press a button and it can lift it up and down. Why is that not the same thing?
Right.
And the difference is...
How is that different?
You did not strain your muscles so that you could grow strong. The point isn't to have strength in the elevated machine. It's to have strength in your body so that you can do things that the machine can't replicate on the sports field. In the same way, in the classroom, I'm not asking you to lift the weight so that I can see a weight move from here to here, so that we can go from no words on the page to 1,500 words on pages. That's not what's motivating me to give you the assignment. And so I have to make sure you understand my motivation for you is for your mind to become stronger, not for a piece of output. So then you get to what kinds of assignments now must you do if students don't latch on to your understanding with you. They don't gravitate and align with you and understand, why do I need to do this kind of assignment by myself? Then what you do is you have to start coming up with assignments that approximate that same kind of training with these tools. Okay, can I now use these tools to help their mind get stronger? And some things that we've spoken about include prompt competitions. I saw this a couple weeks ago on LinkedIn from another educator, and I thought it was a great idea. And the idea is have students, give them some kind of assignment. Okay, here's the output I want. I want this paper. Let's say it's a paper on a specific topic. I want you to come up with a prompt that generates this output. And then what we're going to do as a group is come up with a rubric. And maybe I would, as the instructor, kind of help determine what the criteria are for what makes that assignment, master work. And maybe I get students to collaborate with me on that based on what we have in some kind of expert authority. Maybe it's a textbook or an expert in the field.
Right.
Then they each do the work, and then we have a competition by looking at each other's outputs. So maybe there's 20 students in the class, and they get in groups of 5, and they look over each piece of output.
Did
and
it
they
answer
determine
the questions?
which one, if they graded it according to the rubric we came up with collaboratively and with an authority,
Which one hits
it best.
Yeah.
And then now we have 4 groups. We turn them into 2 groups, and then we come up with a champion prompt. And then we go into the work of asking as a group together, why did that prompt produce better outputs?
Why did that work?
And some of that may be
else?
related to understanding how LLMs work. And so we have a conversation about how do these tools actually work. And if you can do something like that early in a semester, because this doesn't just have to come to this doesn't have to be only related to my field. You might be able to help students understand what these tools do and why they do them that way, so that when they use them, which they do and will continue to use them in your classes, they use them in ways that are sophisticated and intelligent, right? We don't tell people stop using calculators, stop using Excel.
Right.
We say learn how to get better at Excel. Use it in more. Use it at in the medical profession and clinical setting. Use it at the top of your license. So develop your license.
Well, I think you hit upon something about automation and things and progression of things. You think about the old days of being a farmer, that you might have had just a hoe when you're going down, and then you get to cattle and some oxen pulling things, and now you go to some sort of a big tractor. Now it's an automated tractor or whatever, and you don't hear anybody complaining about that.
And why is that? Because the yield is better for society.
Right.
The costs of whatever it is
it's
lower.
not a lot of difference. It's progress, and you got to work a way around that. I mean, I don't know any other way to have that.
Well, and you also though bring up another problem, and that is we can manipulate the earth in a way that may not actually
the Dust
result
Bowl,
in sustainability.
The Dust Bowl was a great example of that. That they tore up all the dirt, and obviously droughts don't help, but they figured out a way after that. The agriculture department, came in. It had to be developed, and they came in and said, no, you have to have windbreaks, and it stopped a lot of that. The drought subsided, and then you had people saying, well, we need to have windbreaks and everything else to keep it from just absolutely wiping the topsoil off, and there was a learning process with that.
So we're seeing something analogous to this with artificial intelligence already in terms of a problem like that. So Microsoft, which is significantly invested in the development of OpenAI's GPT models, in particular, generative pre-trained transformers, that if they looked at the model of GPT-4 as a frontier model, they were using images of sea creatures to illustrate the size and difference between these models developing over time. GPT-4 was like an orca whale. GPT-5, which is in development, is like a blue whale. And GPT-3, 3.5, was more like a dolphin. So you think of the scale comparison of a dolphin to an orca, and then an orca to a blue whale at its largest size.
Yeah.
The GPT-5 is going to be better at reasoning. But here's where a lot of the problem in training these LLMs arises. Where does the new information come from to train it on?
Is it still pulling from the old
it's
sets
not just,
that we had?
Well, and not just pulling from the old sets. Is it now, because of significant, rapid rise of use, 100 million at least daily active users on these on just I think OpenAI's ChatGPT tools. All of this is going into the internet. All of this is going into books on Amazon.
Right.
And so all of it is being fed back into, perhaps, the training, which means it's training on its own work, which means it's not necessarily getting better, but it may become significantly worse. And they already saw this as they were training GPT-4. They saw the rise immediately from GPT-3 and GPT 3.5, that this was already starting to happen. And so there were days when people who were monitoring the usage of certain prompts online were saying, wow, this seems like it's getting significantly worse. It's getting dumber.
It just seems to be more garbage in there. Do you think after the ChatGPT 5.0 comes in, and that's the blue whale, the 6.0 will be like Amazon's mechanical turkey that you keep talking about for whatever that reason is? One last question for you, my friend. And I appreciate you being on the show. It's fascinating.
Well, I'm gonna answer part of that question for you first.
You don't have to.
No, because it's so interesting, and I love talking about this topic. The scale for the training is not an imaginary, we just kind of invest time and we push buttons. But we have to build 12 building campuses like here in Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
And we have to build lots of them all over the country. Or we have to build a super massive one that requires hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. Maybe it's $100 billion just to buy the chips and then to network them all. You have to pay for all the people to work in it to keep it cool so it doesn't fall apart. Then you have to have all the electricity that can essentially be made available to that one place consistently until it's done training.
Yeah.
And there comes a point where it's not, at least currently, it's not possible to get to a GPT-6. A GPT-5, yes, because of what's going on, but a GPT-6, GPT-7, the need to develop those requires significant scale shifts in
the
training.
Resources alone,
Yes.
it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Couple last questions. Okay. Why'd you shave off the beard? Are you too good to have facial hair? John and I have been really upset by this as beard wearers religiously. And you had one, and then suddenly you think you're better than all of us. You know,
I left the beard faith, I guess.
it's a beard faith. We try to do what we can. I appreciate you being on the show. I think at some point I'd love to have you back on here. You talked about magic last time you and I talked. I'd love to have you on the show, magic, and how that can work in a classroom and kind of the things that go along with the philosophies of that. Would you want to come back for that sometime?
Yeah, and you're specifically referring to performance magic illusions, not occultist magic.
Oh, I don't care either way.
I do.
I'll take,
I obviously care.
If you want to bring Merlin in and Gandalf, I could actually, that'd be really cool.
We're both Christians, so let me say one last thing.
What do you got? Go ahead.
I am not an AI expert. I'm an AI enthusiast.
That's whatever. I don't even know that anyone. Just call yourself an expert. And who am I to question that? Well, folks, Dr. David Stehlik here talking about AI, and I hope you found this interesting. If you've got any questions, you can reach out to Dr. David Stehlik at what's your email?
DSTEHLIK @sf.edu.
At sf.edu. You can send your AI questions out to him. He's lucky to have your questions and love to talk with you a little bit about it. He's passionate about it and has a wealth of knowledge. I've been your host, Eric, the AI chiropractor. I'm going to go with that from now on. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time, folks.